Hello everyone, and welcome back to Omnisci Approved. In this painting tutorial, we'll be taking obliterators up to a battle-ready standard. These techniques have the intent of making a pleasing look on the tabletop, while still leaving plenty of room to improve on the model later on. My specific style of painting allows you to paint in stages, getting it to battle-ready so that you can play some games with your friends, and then as you have a time or as you have a want to, you can go back, add on highlights, extra shade, and extra details. This is a really efficient technique and helps you get models out at a very consistent level. And as previously said, it's very easy to continue to elevate the model and get a better quality out of your paint job. Now, this won't win any painting competitions, but that's not the goal here. The goal here is to have consistent and well-made miniatures at every step of the process. So without further ado, let's get into painting our obliterators. Alright, to get things started, we're going to be using a Citadel contrast paint, Guilliman Flesh. I find Guilliman Flesh to be a very, very good way to get very interesting and quick flesh tones, especially if you want to apply an additional shade afterwards. Obliterators and mutilators alike both have a lot of flesh and skin showing, as they're mutated amalgams of weapon and man. So just take your time, work your way around the model. Everywhere that you want there to be flesh, go ahead and hit with this paint. We're going to be going over this a little bit later to get some more detail and some more interest in it, but for right now we're just trying to get a good solid coat. Try your best to avoid any area that you do not wish to be flesh colored. For a lot of the spots it won't matter, but the main armor plates we really want to try to avoid here. After your skin is done, we're going to go back over with another contrast paint, and in yellow. Yellow is a paint color that a lot of people talk about being very, very difficult to do, and this has been my solution to it. I also, with my Chaos Marines, I didn't want to have the standard dark colors you seem to see for most of them, and I have enough red Marines already. I didn't need another chapter of just red dudes with armor. So with this, I wanted to try a method of yellow that I thought gave you a really, really nice result with minimal actual effort, though it is a bit time consuming. So with this paint, you want to go around and not too heavily, you want to touch all of the armor plates you want to end up yellow. This paint can go on really thick and it kind of gets more orange than yellow if you don't take your time with it. So once again, be careful. If you make mistakes and get up on the trim, that does not matter. We're going to be covering that anyway. So just take your time. Next up, we have another contrast, Blood Angel's Red. We're going to just go ahead and hit the tabard on one of the two obliterators, and the plasma coils on the plasma cannon it has on its shoulder as well. Once again, make sure you don't cross-contaminate your other colors, and we're going to also come back and touch up the plasma coil again to make it a more rich and vibrant color later on. This is just to kind of establish your values. Next up, we have a shade, Druchii Violet. Remember I mentioned we're going to make the skin look more interesting? Here we go. The Druchii Violet thinned down slightly with water. We're going to go ahead and apply that where the weapons seem to be bursting out of the backs of these guys. It makes the skin look irritated and just not happy, which I can't think that it would be if it had metal shooting through it from different angles. You know, just take your time with this. If you do make some mistakes, it's perfectly fine. Whenever you're painting with a shade, you can just add a little bit of extra water to a clean brush and wick the shade away. Next up, we're taking Lead Belcher, another Citadel paint, and hitting all the areas we want metallic. This is going to be the most time-consuming part of the paint job. Go through it, be very, very careful on all the trim. Try your best not to cross over to the yellow. If you do, it'll make life a bit harder on us later on in the process. But if you do make a mistake onto the yellow, get your favorite white paint, go back over the spot you've just done, it'll take a couple coats, and then reapply the and in yellow, and you should still end up with a nice effect. So just take your time, it's worth it. Next, we're going to take some Balthazar Gold. We're going to hit a few of the areas of metal and turn them gold, like the flamer and the bullets for the assault cannon thing. The main part of this is it's bringing a little bit of extra warmth to a otherwise somewhat cold model. At least it's cold now. It'll warm up by the time we're done. But a little bit of visual interest on the metallics is never a bad thing. You know, more colors usually makes it a little more interesting to look at. When you're picking out the shells on there, I like to pick out just the actual bullets themselves and try to leave the casing a different color. It doesn't matter which direction you're going with it, but once again, it just kind of makes it a little bit more visually interesting. Don't forget on this one's back, he's carrying bullets through his back, so pick out those as well. Now for the weapon casings on the other gentleman, we're going to go in with some Vallejo Air Black. When going over white, I actually like the Air Black. It almost works like a mild contrast paint. Not quite as good, but it gets the job done. So just add a couple thin coats of this and it'll come out really nice. Actually, the more I use it, the more I like it better than Abaddon Black. Once again, be absurdly careful around the yellow. Another neat trick with this is I don't like drilling my barrels. It's too easy to mess up a model that way. But you can take some black paint and just dot the barrel tips and it'll give you a similar effect. Next up, we're going to take pale sand and touch pale sand to all of the areas where we have teeth or spikes or any bone protrusions. It's going to go on really, really easy with the light. And also, don't forget his creepy little toenails. God, I know I wanted to. Next up, we're going to go back to Blood Angel's Red again. Told you we were going to. Touch the plasma coil, gives it a little more definition, and then the little cylinders on his back, I like to touch it into the metallic for the cylinders. It makes it look like it's carrying ammunition for the plasma. Next up, we're going to take another Citadel shade, Seraphim Sepia. Touch all the bones with this. It's a very light yellow shade, so it does kind of bring it back in line with the rest of the model without making it too yellow. Alternatively, you could use Agrax Earthshade if you wanted a more dark color on the bone. I really didn't. Next up, we're going in with a Citadel base color, Corn Red. So another one's going to take some time because these things are scattered everywhere, but I'm hitting all of the piping, the jewel on the flamer, and yeah, just take your time with it. There's a lot of little pipes hidden. If you're ever doing this and you find later on in the process that you missed something, just go back and fill it back in. Take your time, thin your paint down so it flows nicely so you don't end up making mistakes and going over onto your skin color. Next up, this is another thing you need to be very careful with, taking some Nuln Oil. You want to hit all of the metallics. That's all of the metal parts for the weapons, and the trim as well. That's where you have to be very careful. If you cut over too much onto the yellow, it's going to make your life hard down the road, but this step is crucial. It makes the trim look so much nicer. It gives it a little bit of weathering, and it keeps it from looking too clean, I guess is the word. You'll know when you do it, just trust me. This stuff is called liquid magic for a reason. Next up, we're going to do Vallejo Game Color Gold Yellow. Now, Vallejo Game Color paints are really good. This particular one is really translucent, so it goes on almost like a thick glaze. Not quite like Citadel Contrast paint if you're used to that, but not quite a regular paint. Normally it takes a lot of coats to get a good, a good opaque layer, but with this technique, we've already established a really nice base of a lighter yellow. So going over this just adds a lot of richness, and the little nicks and cuts on the armor where the Yen in contrast was able to settle will still come through, and you'll be able to see that underneath the glaze. So just hit every single part of the yellow with this. It'll also help to smooth out some of the major differences between areas. If you ended up having too much contrast pool, doing this glaze over top will even that out. So it's kind of just your cleanup step for the entire model. Alright, next up we're going to take another contrast paint for the base, Cygor Brown. Take your time. For my base, I spent a lot of time using cork and some sand and a little bit of like mortar mix and things like that to build up the base and give it a nice realistic texture. After you do that and you get it primed, contrast paints once again are really good at making the base look varied in color and tone, and it's really nice. And whenever you're doing a paint job that has a lot of light colors like what I'm doing, you want to go with a darker base color. It's a nice contrast for the model. And there you have it, a quick and easy way to get a good tabletop standard on some obliterators. This is also a good way to do yellow armor for anything you're painting that would need it. Whether you're actually doing some Yand and Eldar, or you're doing Imperial Fists, this is going to be a little bit time consuming, but a nice and easy way to get a good finish on your yellow armor. And once again, a very important step for all of the painting tutorials I show you is that this is but the beginning of painting these models. You can go back at a later date for any of the models that I'm going to show you how to paint, and eventually just grow it up into a better and better standard. This is just the beginning, folks. But, as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And if you have any comments or would like to just speak with me, please leave a comment down below. I do reply to every single one. And, as always, this video has been Omnisci approved.